Off the coast of Rhode Island, they're racing to complete one of America's largest renewable energy projects before Donald Trump can pull the plug.
I've always been a Trump supporter because I've always felt that as a fisherman, Trump has had our backs as working men.
Fishermen like Gary Yerman, hired with their boats to support construction, voted for Trump. Then their president ordered work to stop.
From a personal standpoint, I think that I'm puzzled why he did what he did at this juncture of a wind farm that's 80% completed. I don't understand why.
But with Trump and wind, it's complicated. And a particular beef goes all the way back to 2012 when he tried and failed to sue the Scottish government for ruining the view from his golf course in Aberdeenshire. And he's clearly not forgotten.
They're ugly, they don't work, they kill your birds, they're bad for the environment.
Wind is a disaster. It's a very expensive joke, frankly.
The $5 billion
$103 billion investment plan across 6 African countries. The package signals how Africa is becoming a critical arena in global competition for minerals and markets. Congo will receive the largest share, $21 billion. It will be spread across mining, hydrocarbons, agriculture, and 12 other sectors. Mozambique is set to receive $20 billion in investments, mainly targeting agriculture and energy. Zambia and Zimbabwe get $19 billion each, invested in oil, gas, and 11 additional sectors. And Botswana and Burundi will receive $12 billion each, with Botswana's package covering infrastructure, diamond processing, tourism, cybersecurity, and defense. While Burundi's deal centers on energy, farming, and infrastructure. Now, for years,
For the first time in modern history, Africa has just created an energy alliance so huge, so valuable, and so strategically powerful that it has instantly shaken every energy market on Earth. Valued at over $2 trillion, this pact doesn't just change Africa's future, it threatens Europe's entire energy strategy. The world is calling it the largest geopolitical power shift since the Cold War, and Europe is already scrambling. This is the story the Western media does not want you to hear. Over the last 2 decades, Africa has been treated primarily as a raw resource supplier. Europe imported African oil and gas for decades at discounted prices, while African nations struggled with refinancing, technology access, and weak infrastructure. But in 2025, everything changed. Africa's major energy producers, Nigeria, Angola, Mozambique, Tanzania, Algeria, Egypt, Ghana, Namibia, Senegal, and South Africa, quietly formed what analysts are now calling the Africa Unified Energy Corridor, AUEC, a pact worth a staggering $2 trillion in projected value, a long-term cooperation agreement involving gas, oil, LNG, hydrogen, and green energy. This is not simply a trade deal. This is a continental realignment of power, and its timing is perfectly engineered. Because Europe, especially after the Russia-Ukraine war, has been suffering from a massive gas shortage, skyrocketing electricity prices, unstable import routes, declining industrial output, falling public support for energy policies, a desperate need for non-Russian energy. Europe thought Africa would remain its backup plan. But Africa had other plans. With new partnerships from China, Gulf states, India, Turkey, BRICS plus countries, and huge domestic investment, Africa no longer needs Europe to reach global markets. The $2 trillion pact immediately delivered 4 shocks. Africa will now refine, process, and export finished energy products, not raw materials. No more cheap exports. Africa will prioritize long-term energy buyers outside Europe, especially Asia. Europe will no longer enjoy preferential access to African energy. African countries will jointly negotiate prices, transport routes, and commercial terms. This right here, especially point number 4, is what sent Europe into full panic mode. Because Europe has never dealt with a united African energy front. And now, for the first time ever, Africa controls the pipelines. Africa controls the LNG ports. Africa controls the pricing. Africa controls the markets. And Europe? Europe is now the one waiting, hoping, and scrambling. The world sees the $2 trillion evaluation. But it didn't happen overnight. This pact was engineered in 5 major phases. Phase 1. Infrastructure consolidation. African producers began expanding domestic capacity. Nigeria's mega refineries, Mozambique's Rovuma LNG, Tanzania's LNG terminal, Senegal's GTA gas project, Namibia's new oil discoveries. Algeria's gas expansion, Egypt's renewable megasite, South Africa's hydrogen corridor. For the first time, Africa committed to process locally, export finished energy, set its own OPEC-style terms. Phase 2. Foreign investors replaced historically Europe-dominated African energy assets. Not anymore. Investment shifted to China's Belt and Road Energy Framework, UAE's Masdar Green Energy Funds, India's long-term LNG contracts, Turkey's pipeline engineering consortiums, Saudi energy banks, Qatar's LNG export partnerships. Europe woke up too late. Phase 3. Continental price alignment. African ministers agreed on a unified export pricing model. No more underpricing, no more country-by-country deals, a single African negotiation standard. This is the same strategy that made OPEC one of the most influential economic blocs in history. Phase 4. The Africa-Asia Energy Highway. This was the real game changer. A new network of LNG megaships, subsea pipelines, green hydrogen corridors, intercontinental power cables, joint stockpiling hubs created a direct energy route between Africa and Asia, bypassing Europe entirely. This is exactly why Western analysts panicked. Europe finally realized Africa no longer needs Europe, but Europe desperately needs Africa. Phase 5. Formal signing of the pact during a closed-door summit involving Nigeria, Algeria, Angola, Egypt, Mozambique, Tanzania, Ghana, Namibia, South Africa, Senegal. The $2 trillion pact was finalized. Within 72 hours, European energy markets fell sharply. Within 7 days, the EU Emergency Energy Council held a closed meeting. Within 14 days, French media called it the most dangerous economic shift for Europe in 50 years. Because Europe suddenly faces a scenario it never expected. Energy insecurity caused not by Russia, but by Africa. The panic in Europe is real and immediate. Because Africa now has the leverage that Europe used to enjoy. Here's what Europe fears most. 1. The loss of cheap African energy. Europe relied heavily on Nigerian oil, Algerian gas, Libyan crude, Angolan oil, Mozambican LNG. These were sold at prices far below global standards due to colonial-era agreements. The new pact ends all of that. Prices will now follow global benchmarks. African set contracts, long-term protected supply terms. Europe will now pay what Asia pays, or even more. 2. Asia is taking Europe's position. Asia is making massive long-term offers. 20-year LNG contracts, direct financing of pipelines, joint refineries, shared technology, guaranteed purchase volumes. Europe can't match these because its industries are weakening, its energy costs are too high. Its budgets are constrained, its population opposes new fossil deals. Asia is rising. Europe is declining. Africa is choosing the future, not the past. 3. Europe's industrial collapse risk. German manufacturers openly warned, if energy prices remain this high, we will shut down or relocate. Where will they relocate? India, China, Gulf states, possibly even Africa. The pact pushes Europe closer to industrial recession. 4. Europe cannot replace African energy. Norway? Too small. US LNG? Too expensive. Russia? Politically impossible. Middle East? Already committed to Asia. That leaves only Africa, but Africa now controls access. 5. Europe fears the new OPEC. If Africa fully unites under one energy bloc, Europe loses supply control, price influence, geopolitical pressure, bargaining power. For the first time, Europe is not negotiating with individual African nations. It must negotiate with the continent. This is Europe's nightmare scenario. This pact is more than energy. It marks a continental identity shift. Africa can now fund its own infrastructure, expand its own industries, build world-class refineries, power its own cities, create export-ready megaprojects, raise millions out of poverty, claim global influence. And here's the biggest change. Africa will no longer be a raw material exporter. For 100 years, Africa exported crude oil instead of refined fuel gas, instead of finished LNG minerals, instead of processed metals. That era is ending. The new pact includes refining, processing, manufacturing, shipping, Green energy transitions, local content mandates, job creation priorities. This means Africa now keeps the value inside Africa. Not in Europe, not in France, not in the US, not in China. Inside Africa. Economists say Africa may enter its first true industrial revolution, a major infrastructure boom, a population wealth transition, a new era of energy independence. This is why the world is shocked. And this is why European think tanks are calling it the greatest geopolitical shockwave ever initiated by Africa. For the first time ever, Africa is holding the power, literally. A $2 trillion energy pact has turned the global economy upside down. Europe is scrambling. Asia is celebrating. And Africa is rising. Not as a supplier, not as a dependency, but as a global energy superpower.